Hola.
Hola.
¿Esto está encendido?
Lightspeed Spanish, podcast number 18 for early intermediate. And this one is about the meals, the eating routine in Spain. Okay? Bueno, India.
I just wanted to know if this was turned on, because I couldn't hear myself.
Okay. Not sure how many times I've got to tell you not to speak whilst we're recording. Okay, India.
That's the point.
¿Qué tal? ¿Qué tal estás?
Muy bien, ¿y tú?
Estoy muy bien, muy bien. Fenomenal, de verdad, fenomenal.
Qué bien, gordo.
Sí.
Vale, meals in Spain.
Meals in Spain. Okay, let's start. And I'd like to make a comparison with the UK, just purely to talk about what's happened in Spain lately. In the UK, we have very distinct meals the way that we used to have them. It used to be breakfast, mid-morning snack, lunch, afternoon tea, and then dinner. Okay? Now, what we have, the word dinner is becoming mixed up with lunch, and so we have the word tea as well. So we often have, with breakfast, we don't get that mixed up. Morning break, that's pretty much okay. But then we have dinner, lunch, dinner and lunch. And for the evening meal, we have tea and dinner.
And what about supper?
And then we have supper, yeah.
You never say supper in this area anyway.
You can do something for supper, but we don't eat supper because we eat so late. All right, so if you can see, there's a mix-up between dinner and lunch, tea and dinner. Okay. Now, what's happening in Spain is a similar thing. In certain regions, there's a bit of a mix-up, which we'll explain. But what are the typical meals in Spain?
Okay. So it used to be desayuno, which is breakfast.
Breakfast.
Then almuerzo, which was the mid-morning snack.
Yeah, mid-morning snack. Yeah.
Comida, lunch, merienda, which is usually like a sandwich at 5, which is your tea.
That would be the high tea, the afternoon tea.
And la cena, which is dinner, supper. Dinner. Yes, but lately I've noticed that some people mix almuerzo and comida.
Sure.
So they say, if they mean, have you had your lunch, they say, has almorzado, instead of has comido.
Okay.
Because it was always, almuerzo was, at least where I come from, in Madrid, it was mid-morning snack.
Sure. So, and I believe in Latin America, certainly in Mexico, for example, el almuerzo seems to be the lunch.
Okay.
Yeah?
So.
So there might be, you get sort of these cross-cultural influences as well, don't you? Now, just to clarify something, I don't know if you picked up, Cynthia said, he almorzado. The reason for that, I have morning breaked. Okay. What's interesting in the Spanish language is that for every meal, there's also a verb. Now, in English, we would say, I have dined. Okay, it's not very common. But kind of if you go out for a special evening meal, you might say we're going to dine in a restaurant. But that's probably the only verb that we would use. But in Spanish, every mealtime is a verb. So what are these verbs? What to breakfast is?
Desayunar.
Desayunar. So, morning break to morning break?
Almorzar.
Almorzar. Then to eat?
Comer.
At lunchtime? Comer, so it has a dual meaning that. Afternoon break?
Merendar. No, afternoon break.
Yeah, the evening, the afternoon tea break, yeah?
Merendar.
Merendar, and then
Cenar.
Evening. Cenar. So what happens in Spain is, for example, if you want to say, this morning I have eaten breakfast, you can just use the verb. You can say, esta mañana he desayunado, okay? Cereales. Lots of students want to say, he comido el desayuno.
No.
So I've eaten breakfast, which is how we would say that in English. But in Spanish, you go straight for the verb. He desayunado. Or if you're talking about your usual daily routine, desayuno a las 9. I breakfast at 9. Yeah? Talking about the hours of the
timetable.
The eating, how does that work in Spain?
Breakfast, el desayuno, is normally about 8:30, I'd say, depending on working hours in school, but I'd say 8:30. Very basic, our breakfast.
What would that be?
Usually sugary things like buns or, how do you say, croissant? Because we say croissant.
Croissant.
It's too French for me.
Croissant.
Or cereal or toast.
Yeah.
Not typically something fried.
No.
Not now.
No.
Used to be, but not now. Juice. Some people only a coffee or
a cigarette.
Juice.
Coffee and a cigarette. Yeah.
And then some people don't have a snack, so
No.
they just go straight for la comida. La comida is typically at 2, 3, 4 in Madrid.
So quite late.
Yeah, in Madrid we have lunch the latest in Europe.
Really?
At 4:30.
Wow.
So they say.
Okay.
But typically 2:30, 3. That's lunch. And for lunch we usually have 2 dishes. The main one, well, not the main one, which is different here. We've got like usually a soup or something warm, a spoon food.
Something you would eat with a spoon, yeah?
Yes, and then number 2, course 2 or second course would be something meaty.
Okay.
Typically.
Okay.
So with fork and knife, the second one. Then la merienda is about 5:30. More than anything for kids.
Coming from school.
They come from school, and their parents sometimes bring a sandwich to. Well, when I mean a sandwich, I mean a baguette, no the bread. What do you call that bread?
Sliced bread.
Not sliced bread. Typically not. The
Bocadillo.
Proper bread. Yeah, un bocadillo with anything really, pate or Nutella or something like this, or cured meat. And then we have dinner. No, well, la cena.
Yeah.
Dinner.
Evening meal. Yeah,
Evening meal at around 9:30. More or less.
And what kind of size would that be? Would it be a big meal?
No, it's not. It is. Well, I think the biggest meal is the lunch in Spain. It's not a massive meal typically. Something, for example, one that my mom always used to prepare was breast, chicken fillets, breaded, and then some chips.
Okay.
Something like that.
Yeah.
So not something massive.
Sure. Okay, so everything seems to be obviously the breakfast, 8:30, whatever. Maybe a little later than a traditional time to have breakfast in the UK, where most people are kind of 7 o'clock. They're having something before they go to work.
But your breakfasts are not that big here. Well, apart from your all-day breakfast, but that only happens on Sunday.
And on holidays.
Holidays, but typically it's not very different from.
No, I think that the biggest difference that we have here, and I've asked lots and lots of students, the biggest difference is that our lunch tends to be a sandwich now, and in Spain the lunch is the biggest meal.
Yes, typically.
And our evening meal tends to be the biggest. Not only is it the biggest of the day, but it's a lot earlier. In general, certainly in this region, people eat between 5 and 6. And normally by 5:30, the vast majority of people have had their evening meal. In
How
Spain,
did you last until the next morning?
they might have pickies or a little supper or something like that. Hence, we have supper for those people. Yeah, maybe cereal or something like that. So, okay. So, for example, Cynthia, ¿has desayunado hoy?
Sí, he desayunado cereales. He desayunado Weetabix con fruta.
Vale.
Frambuesa, fresa y leche y miel
Vale.
y
Sí.
pasas.
Y, ¡oh!
Un
¡Qué
buen-
desayuno!
Sí, y una tostada.
Sí.
¿Y tú qué has desayunado?
He desayunado 2 tostadas con mantequilla.
¿Y no tenías la mantequilla de
¿De
cacahuete?
cacahuete? No.
Oh.
No. Solamente tostadas.
Mi desayuno mejor que el tuyo.
Sí, sí.
¿Y qué has comido?
He comido... ¿qué he comido?
Un bocadillo.
Un bocadillo de carne y ensalada y una salchicha.
Mm.
¿Y tú?
Yo he comido un bocadillo y también me he comido corned beef square.
Con biscuit. Qué
Sí,
rico. Sí.
Y-
Okay.
Sí.
We'll have to watch the time because we're coming to
Vale.
the end of that.
Sí.
So that's the daily routine in Spain as opposed to the one in the UK. Be careful with this almuerzo y comer. You're going to hear both. Okay? Hope that was of value to you. Nos vamos. Y nos vemos. Adiós.
Hasta luego.